last album of the week, the B-52's self-titled debut album.
Yep.
Matt, why don't you bumper it? And I think I get first say, right?
Yep. So B-52s comes in at number 194 on Best Ever Albums in the 1970s, number 14 in 1979, number 871 of all time. It is the B-52's highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, and it did make Rolling Stone's list, coming in at number 198 of all time.
Is it a rock? No.
Yeah. This is a rollicking good time of an album. It's an album that just puts a smile on your face. I think the B-52's career is fascinating because they released this album, and you hear the B-52s described as a lot as genre. I think of them as a new wave band, especially early would be how I'd describe them. But with all kinds of other influences, like 50s type stuff along the way. So there's that. But they have this career where they're that, and they sound one way, and then tragically, the sort of the musical pull, the guy who writes most of the songs, and the guitarist dies young of AIDS, actually, and then they kind of like go into the wilderness, right? And then they come back with like Love Shack and Rome, and there's elements
Shiny Happy People.
Well, that's an REM song that has one member of the B-52s singing on it, so I don't consider that a B-52s song. That's just a solo project, almost one song. But because they're both from Athens, Georgia, right? That's I think where that comes from. Yeah,
but that was all around the same time. That's when I was like, man, who? Because the B-52s. Well, anyway, I'll speak to that later. Go ahead.
That's I'm not going to say you're not right, but I just what I'm going for though is I think I always find it interesting when a band reinvents themselves as something slightly different than they were before. And like this version of the if you only know like Love Shack, Rome B-52s, this version of the B-52s is very different. And I remember when, way back when I first got, Cosmic Thing is that album. And I remember somebody saying, back in the day, the B-52s were a lot more edgy. And I'm like, how are they edgy? You know what I mean? Like this stuff doesn't seem edgy at all. It's fun time music. But they're not wrong. This stuff is fun time music, but it's a lot more edgy. It's new wave edgy. You know what I mean? Where there's just, you often hear the B-52s described as like kitschy kind of, and, stuff like that. Like they celebrate like, a sort of garish culture, American culture. And when you look at the cover of the album, it gives a aesthetic to it. And the aesthetic was important to them. But I think what stood out to me is that there's a lot of good songs on this album. And there's a lot of unique songs that are hard to categorize if you were describing to someone what they were. I was particularly taken by the guitar on this album.
It's so good.
It's really good. It's really good, and it really stands out. When I think of the B-52s, I think of percussion and harmonies. And they're here, too. But, and I think that is what Ricky Wilson, who's the guitarist who died, I think that might be the difference, because I think he's playing the lead on this, and his sound is distinctive, and I didn't notice it pop out to me. And I went back and listened to Cosmic Thing this week just to see, and the guitar is there, and it's fine, but it doesn't, the tasty licks, as they say, are not there that kind of tie a lot of these songs together. So, I think the song most people would know is Rock Lobster, but the standout for me is Planet Claire. I love that song. It really was a cool song, and just I love and I don't want to take too much, so I'm going to jump back in, but I really like some of the musical choices they make. They zig when I think they're going to zag, and I say that sometimes about albums I really like. You can predict kind of where they're going, but sometimes they go in a different version of the sound than you exactly think it's going to go, but it's always welcome. And I'll give some examples later, but I'll turn it over to you guys, hear what you think.
I think that's what makes them new wave in my mind.
And surf is the other sound I heard all throughout this.
Yeah, I think I'm glad we covered this. I very much enjoyed it as well. I knew Rock Lobster. I think that was the only song I knew on here. And it just opens up. Actually, I like Planet Claire a lot too, John. It reminded me of like Spy versus Spy.
It's like a variation on the Peter Gunn theme.
Yes, yeah.
For sure.
So along with like the drums and the guitar, it's very staccato. There's not many like chords where they're just playing out guitar chords. It's like a very da 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 da, very staccato like that. And I yes, I see the new wave here. This kind of falls into the it's still like the nerd rock category. It's like this like quirky. It's a little avant-garde. It's a little bit just quirky, nerdy. The guy. What's the lead singer? Fred
Schneider.
Fred Schneider's voice. That's the other thing that stands out. I mean, gosh, his voice is like.
I don't think of it as nerdy though. It's not like is John Waters nerdy, because that's kind of how I feel.
But I felt there were similarities between like this and Devo. Like the Devo album that we heard, and to an extent the Talking Heads. It's kind of like this. It's like this alternative, like new wave rock and roll that's quirky. That's got like these singers that, whether you're talking about their image, how they look or how they sound. It's not like a rock and roll type cool sound. It's like, and I'm not saying it to be disparaging or anything like that, but it definitely kind of falls into this lane of.
No, I agree.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so so that kind of stood out to me as well. But I Devo was kind of the one that stood out the most, like in comparison.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
But I enjoyed this more than Devo. I thought that this was more consistent, and I have to laugh. Like Rock Lobster, it's not only is it a really cool song, like the guitar part towards the end of that. And the first time I realized that was when we played it on Rock Band, which is an interesting thing to do because sometimes I'll play a song on that I've heard many times before, and I'm like, ooh, I'm hearing. Like now that I'm quote unquote playing the guitar part, I'm actually understanding more of what's happening musically here, and so that song that definitely stands out. But it makes you laugh when he's just like, "Hey, it comes a manta ray," and it keeps. There's a jellyfish, it's so goofy, but the music behind it's really good too. So that's kind of good to get into. I laughed just reading the title. There's a moon in the sky called the moon, like So they definitely have this like playful. Thing going on. Really don't have any complaints about this, with the exception of the end of Dance This Mess Around, where they keep going, yeah. Like that part. I was like, okay, I don't need it to be doing that. But very catchy, very upbeat. There's some. You can kind of see them kind of dancing in a weird, quirky way as well, but it's unique and it's grounded in pop. They got the vocals, particularly the female vocals. The harmonies are really good. I like their voices as well, and it kind of just blends well together because they have more of a traditional kind of musical vocal parts compared to Fred's kind of like that nerdy like high pitched wail kind of thing that he does. So I'm thumbs up on this too. This was a fun listen.
This is the B-52s have such a distinct sound. They are recognizable almost immediately, not only because of Fred Schneider, but because of the two women in the group, and the banter and kind of call and response that they do with Fred often throughout the songs is so distinct and kind of, in my mind, a key characteristic of the band and what makes this album work for me so well.
And that's Kate Pearson and Cindy Wilson, just an FYI. And Kate Pearson featured on all kinds of stuff in the early 90s. Matt mentioned Shiny Happy People, but she was also on Candy by Iggy Pop, which was...
Yeah, she just appeared like all of a sudden. That's the other thing. They kind of came out of nowhere. I'm like, and they've been around for forever. And then she was just appearing on other things as well. So that they were definitely a big thing at that time.
And they both have, well, Fred Schneider too, but they all have very strong singing voices. They're powerful and they're able to play and kind of go into vocal ranges and make vocal sounds that not a lot of other bands that we've listened to on the show go to. And John, I think you're right in that, not only is their sound distinct, but their look is paying homage to 50s drive-ins, poodle skirts, things like that. Yeah. I would say like teen culture at that time, B movies, rockabilly for sure is like a key component, and the John Waters thing I think is apt too. I think that's a similar thing. He was making movies around the same time as well. if not earlier, I think.
Do they have a connection to him or something? You guys bringing him up? Like,
it's just the same aesthetic to me.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
They're not. Yeah, John Waters is from Baltimore, so I don't think so. But the guitar and the bass on this are like really distinct, and there are so many. I mean, Rock Lobster is a perfect example of a guitar line that gets stuck in your head. Is it a guitar or bass, that line? Doon, 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 doon,
It's
doon.
guitar.
Okay,
Oh wait.
yeah.
No.
Oh, that part.
Well,
That's
see,
that's probably the guitar part is my guess.
The weird thing is that Ricky Wilson, I was trying to figure out what it was that I was noticing. He apparently changed his guitar tuning. Like sometimes every song, or even in playing the song in concert, he would do it in different guitar tunings, which I'm pretty sure he did on this album, because it sounds like a different instrument at different times. Yeah. And that's a good example of it. It's like we're trying to remember. But yeah, I think it's a guitar line. Yeah. Yeah.
And another example of that's like 52 Girls, the second song. There's just an incredibly catchy guitar line on that. The other thing you mentioned, John, that's also is beach rock. There's like a beach sound to this album, and there's an intentionally retro aesthetic to the whole album and feel of this that really works and makes them distinct. The organ is really great on this and is used effectively, and I just really love, like John says, they really play with how they deliver lines, where they deliver lines, kind of how it plays with the music, and it's always unexpected. Now, the lyrics and the songs are insane. It's like in the same way that some of the Talking Head songs are kind of about like mundane things. Well, these are about, I mean, Rock Lobster is an insane song if you read the lyrics to it, but also a song like Lava, which is like about volcanoes, but it also is clearly about sex. And it's, that's intentional, obviously. And like you said, there's a moon in the sky called the moon. So you're not like looking for any profound messages on this album.
Do very obvious like symbolism, but also they do bizarre things where it's like, well, what even is a rock lobster? It's like it's like surrealistic kind of like, oh, what if there was a rock lobster and they were also not like creating a world, like, it's a sort of surrealistic, absurdist concept.
Yeah.
But also lots of sex. Yeah.
Right. And they push the envelope too. Matt mentioned this, like on Dance This Mess Around, they kind of go into places where the song gets a little abrasive and abstract, and it's interesting. I can see how that would be a turnoff, but then they bring it back, and I don't know. It's such a unique album that is kind of reminiscent of so many things, but sounds uniquely of themselves, and I applaud the band for that. This is my album of the week. It's the one I most enjoyed listening to and re-listening to. I only knew Rock Lobster, so it was fun hearing all these other songs, and definitely want to put this more into the rotation.
Nice. This is a thumbs up for me as well. I enjoyed this quite a bit.
I'm trying to figure, are they still around? I saw it looks like they had an album out in 2008 called Funplex.
They toured in 2011, and they still are listing people as active members. Yeah. The three main members, Fred Schneider, Kay Pearson, Cindy Wilson, are viewed as active members in 2022.
There's a live album from 2011 and from 2015. So
there was in 2020 there was a Archie Comics thing, Archie meets the B-52S, which makes me chuckle. Yeah. They also were on multiple shows on Adult Swim, which totally makes sense because
Oh, no, they're quirky. They're I that aesthetic. You're right. It is like this throwback kind of like, they got on the cover they have like beehive hairdos the women do. So I appreciate it. It's unique.
Oh yeah, and there's that Simpsons song "Glove Slap" for Love Shack.
And I have to say, I see a picture of them here from about 2 years ago, and they're looking good. Yeah, they're looking good for folks who were at the time they would have been like 63, because most of them are around 65 right now. So good on them, man. But unfortunately, multiple members died young, most notably lead guitarist Ricky Wilson, who died at 32 years old, and apparently kept it a secret from all but one person in the band, including his sister, who was in the band.
Yeah, I was going to say he's got her name's Wilson as well. So
Yep. So it was apparently she found out right as he was at the end, which is very sad. So
not only did he play the guitar, he's also listed as playing the smoke alarm in this album.
Yeah, apparently on some of the albums after this, it just became him and Strickland, right? Who switched from the drums to the bass, which I thought was really interesting. And there were a couple albums where just the two of them played the music, and then the other three members were just vocalists.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, thumbs up for me.
Yep.
And I